All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 103 of the Sons of Mandalore podcast. My name is Brian, also known as Cruisin', and I'm joined as always by Jimmy DeHaan. Justin, how you doing tonight?
Hey, doing great. Thank you.
Yeah,
Happy to be here.
yeah, we're trying something new this week. We are, in addition to recording a podcast as normal, we are live streaming it on our Twitch channel at twitch.tv/the Sons of Mandalore. So if you're listening to this on iTunes or wherever else you get your podcasts, be sure to check us out over there. We're gonna probably be live streaming these a little more often, and we're always playing games on TTS on there, and probably to be doing it a lot more with Store Championship season underway and getting ready for Gen Con pretty soon. We'll be doing some practice games on there. We have some big plans for how we're gonna do that too. I plan on recording some practice games with overlay and decisions and that kind of stuff to help break down the game. So anyway, we're gonna be doing a lot of stuff over there, so be sure to check it out. But we wanted to just hop into this episode because obviously Way of the Forest just came out yesterday.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
super excited. We had a draft at our local shop just yesterday. We had 11 people show up, which is actually quite a bit for our group. We'd been whittling down for a while now. We've been trying to build up the community lately, and so we're really happy. We got a really good turnout. A bunch of new players. We got two separate pods going. It was a lot of fun. Um, and everybody hated me because I drafted Blockade, and so they started with one less resource, and no one wanted to play against me.
Not only did you draft blockade, you made your deck worse to run blockade.
I mean, yeah, you're right. I had an executioner and I had a super commando, Mandalorian super commando. Got to stay on brand, right? And
Oh
so
yeah.
I was planning the whole time to just do that with Anakin and draft a cost plot. I found blockade really early, and then I saw a long-term plans, but I was like, I'm gonna see if I can let it go one more time around, and it was gone. And then the pick after that, you passed me Plo Koon, so I could have had Plo Koon with the Super Commando power action and the Executioner ability, but I was so hooked on like filling out 30 points and using the blockade that I let him go. Uh,
God.
you know what? It might not have been the right action or the right choice, but it was hilarious, and I went 3-0. So results
I say
oriented.
if it works, it
Yeah,
works. But
yeah. So it was a lot of fun. We had at least three guys who had never drafted before. So and they had like really small collections. Obviously, it was one of the best things about draft is that anyone can just hop in and do it. And everybody just had a blast. We had the draft kit going and lots of product. It was a great time.
yeah, the new players are what surprised me because we had been talking up this draft for a while. We knew when the set was like as soon as we had a date for when the set was going to drop. It's like, well, clearly we're coming in the draft that night. So
Yeah,
having brand new people show up, like there's a face or two that I had seen around the shop before, but I'd never seen play Destiny.
yeah,
So that was really cool to see them like interested in the game, excited to play. Like and two, I mean, we almost had two full pods. We had one pod with five guys, but that was fine.
right. Yeah,
But I mean, like really surprising for us because there was a while there where it was just cruising and I. That was it.
yeah,
Like we were the Destiny community.
yeah.
So
But we were vigilant, and I
yeah.
mean, we've been, and this is a brief topic. I can talk about this for days, but um, community building in general, I feel like it's like a lot of the you as a player can do a lot to help that. Like, so we were always complaining like, oh, there's only three of us that go regularly. This sucks. And so we were starting to talk to some people in Discord and got ideas for building up our play group, and we started just posting things on Facebook, events, and open play nights, and we put together two starter decks. Like we just made themed decks that people could play with, and it got a couple new people introduced to the game that had never played it before, and it gave them an easy way to learn, and it just really helped. I feel like that kind of thing, just spreading the news about how fun this game is that obviously we love. uh it's contagious once you combine a fun game with Star Wars and people start seeing you playing it. um people will just start coming in. It's a slow process, but like I said, we had three people at one point, and now we just had 11 last night, so moving in the right direction.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, we wanted to kind of this episode is going to be a little bit more of a looser structure. We just want to talk about the new set because I'm sure you've all listened to a whole bunch of podcasts so far about spoilers and what cards people think are going to be good. And now we've had at least a day to play with a lot of them, especially in draft. And I've been playing some on TTS, but we have some like thoughts on what we think are the early winners of the set. Um, some cards that might be underrated, and some cards that we just think are really strong. And so we just kind of want to go through and just talk about a couple of our favorite cards from the set. So I'm gonna start it off by talking about what I believe is one of the more interesting and also powerful cards, and that is Suppressive Fire. It is a zero cost red support, red hero support, excuse me, and it reads: after a character is activated, you may spend one resource and discard this support from play to remove one of its character dice. So it's the first time in Destiny that you've been able to kind of like react on your opponent's turn with a removal. Um, you can put this down, and as long as you have a resource available, you're always threatening once they activate to remove one of their dice, and it's something that you can. The best part is like you get to use it, and then it's still your turn because it's actually not your action. You're responding to their action, and I'm actually planning on bringing this in the deck that I'm playing at our store championship this weekend because I expect Sabine Ezra to be really popular.
The last hurrah before the nerf
Exactly.
hits. Yeah.
Right. So, like, if you're listening and you're not aware, FFG just released a Holocron update the other day where Sabine, after July 12th, will be 21 points for Elite. So she's plus 1 point, which means you can no longer run her with Elite Ezra. So it's a really popular deck, obviously. It's done really well at a lot of major events. So I expect some people to maybe just say, hey, I want to try this before it's gone forever. And this card lets you react to a Sabine roll. And a lot of times they'll never tell me the odds and max out their damage, and they play what is it? I can't think of the name right now. Running interference, so that you can't react and play a card. Well, this gets around that because it's not playing a card; you're reacting with something. So I feel like I've talked on and on about this. You have any thoughts on Suppressive Fire that I might have left out?
Well, I do think that it's interesting that it is a reaction. Like you don't see that very much in this game,
Yep.
and I am tentative to say I don't want to see them come out with a ton of these, but sprinkling them in here and there with some.
Sure.
I mean, this is a powerful ability, but it costs a resource. It's
It's one-time use.
one-time use, so it's limited enough that I'm happy with it. I really want that back and forth to stay in the game,
Yes.
and um,
Yeah, I think as long as you're not chaining a bunch of them together, it's not really
right,
problematic. And it's
right,
red hero specifically, so it's not like it's going to be in every deck. If this was like gray neutral, it'd be in every deck.
yeah. Red Hero limits it a lot,
Yeah.
so
Yep.
yeah.
Yes, it does. Cool. All right. Well, let's move on to the next one then. This was a card that you had pulled out, so I'll let you take the lead on it. And it is By Any Means. You want to tell the people what it does?
Yeah, so I love this card. For one, it has 000 on it, who is amazing.
It's funny. I was just playing before we started recording. Sorry to interrupt. And one of my friends who we drafted with yesterday, my friend Cam, just came over and we played a couple. Like we just took the cards that we drafted yesterday and built a deck out of it, like the box that we bought and built a deck out of it. And we were playing 000, and he was like, "I have no idea who this character is, but he's really good, and that bothers me that I don't know where he's from." So, but like, it's as much as I hate to admit it, I don't really know where he's from. Like, I only know who 000 is because I met him in Imperial Assault. Like, I'm
Yeah,
a Star Wars fan, but I can't recall where I've actually seen him from. Is he like in the books or?
he's with the Dr. Afra comic books. So
Ah,
Afra runs around with a couple of droids, one of which is 000, the
that
other
makes
is
sense.
BT-1. So the Vader comics and Afra has her own comics now. Like that's where they're from.
Yeah, I
They're
haven't
like,
delved as much into the extended stuff as I should. So maybe
Yeah.
I'll get there one day. Anyway,
But
sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
yeah. So this card, any control card that can hit any die, I am appreciative of. Because sometimes you'll have that special out there that's going to deal 5 damage, or the 6 indirect damage
Well,
from
hold on,
a.
before we get too far into it, let's read what the card does for those that are just listening.
That's fair. That's fair. I'm sorry. Yeah. So this is a yellow villain event, 1 cost. And the text on it is remove a die showing a value of 2 or more, and then deal 1 indirect damage to yourself. So in Aphra decks, there's a lot of mechanics that involve indirect damage. For instance, if you have 000 in play, you deal an indirect damage to yourself. 000 then deals an indirect damage to your opponent.
Right.
So not only do you remove their die, you take a damage, but you also deal a damage in the process. I think that's
And
amazing.
if you're playing Aphra, you draw a card.
Exactly. So this can target anything. It's not limited by anything other than the value on it. So like 2 or more, that's every hard hitting die nowadays. It seems like it's 3+.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going to use this a lot in villain decks. Just the versatility of it, I really enjoy.
Yeah. So like
Yeah.
for the most part, when you're removing dice, you want to remove impactful dice, and so being 2 or more is kind of nice. Obviously, you can't hit specials. That's probably the big downside of it.
Right.
But still, a 2 or more die is usually a pretty impactful die. So certainly a lot of value there, especially if you're running, like you said, 000 and Aphra.
Yeah. And especially like, in the villain side of things, there's a lot of modifier, like big modifier sides, like Maul Saber, Fifth Brothers Saber, even like Ancient Lightsaber, things like that, where getting rid of that black side that's showing the melee damage is very useful.
Yep.
And you've got characters like Count Dooku that, he'll be rolling out 2s and 3s every round. So being able to remove that, you've got a 000 out there, you also deal with damage. It's pretty sweet.
Yep. Super cool card. I like it. All right, let's move on to the next one here. That I mentioned that I was bringing Suppressive Fire this weekend, and that's because I believe the deck I'm going to run also uses this next card, and that is Cassian Andor. He is a yellow hero character, 10 health, 10 points for regular, 14 for elite, and his sides are 1 ranged, 2 ranged, discard, resource. And then his text, which is what makes him so good, is after you resolve this die, you may deal 1 indirect damage to an opponent, or discard the top card of a deck. So he's like a mini Pelp. I've heard that comparison a lot.
Yeah.
But he also is super flexible. Like you can use him in a damage deck, like Finn Cassian is the one that I'm thinking of bringing. You could use him in a mill deck, like Yoda Cassian is the thing. Some people have talked about Leia Cassian as well. I've talked about Leia Cassian as well. So there's a lot of things you can do with him. He's just super flexible, and it's just like when I think about the value that this ability gives his die, like his sides are essentially 1 ranged and an indirect, 2 ranged and indirect, discard and the damage, like etc. It's just crazy, and it's at 14 points, so there's a decent number of pairings you could do with him, and obviously Yellow Hero is really good. So
yeah, I mean, he's far and away the most versatile character out of this set because you can do anything in a deck with him. I mean, you might not want to put him in your vehicle deck, but it also wouldn't be that bad if you did, know.
Yeah.
But the sides are good; they're solid. I wish he had a 2 discard, but then he'd cost a little more.
Yeah.
But beyond that, he's amazing. He's also terrifying in draft because not only can you discard a card from their hand, you can also discard a card off the top of their deck and start milling them.
Yeah.
Or you can blow their hand up and deal damage to them as you go. So
yep. Mill is a very real thing in draft.
Mill is very real, and damage is much slower, so he doesn't die near as fast. If he's around for 4 rounds and resolves his dice 4 times, like that's a lot.
Yeah, for sure. That's a lot of cards. Cool. All right, let's move on here. So that was Cassian. So the next one, I before the show, I told Justin all the cards that we were going to talk about, but based on our back and forth in Discord, I would feel amiss if I didn't troll him by bringing up this card. Let's talk
I know
about
what it is.
General Grievous's wheel bike.
It's your favorite.
It's the well. No, I've made a bit of a reputation because I continually bring up this card. All right. Well, all right. Let me first tell everybody what it is, and then we'll talk about why it's so
I'll
ridiculous.
make fun of you about it.
Yeah, right. So it's a 3-cost red villain support, and its sides are 1 ranged, 2 melee, plus 3 melee, disrupt, discard, and blank. And it has a power action that says spend 1 resource or spot General Grievous to ready this support. So when this was spoiled, everybody was like, "This card is terrible." No one,
Yeah.
it's never going to see play, and that last part is probably true. Um, and I kept like looking at it and trying to think about ways that I could make it work or compare it to other things. And I all I've been saying is I don't think it's as bad as people have been making it out to be. Now, does that mean it's a great card? If I crack it in one of my boxes as one of my legendaries, I'm not going to be super happy about it. But still, the ability to be able to resolve it once and then ready it and resolve it again for a possible 4 to 6 damage. There's some possibilities there. So the real mistake I made, and the reason that I get made fun of so much about it, is that the comparison I tried to make was Maul's lightsaber,
Mm-hmm.
which is obviously Maul's lightsaber is much more powerful. But at the same time, Maul's lightsaber is blue character only. The ability to roll it back in is contingent on the opponent not having a shield. This one you can always do. The real downside is that +3 side. Like, it's just hard to find a good pairing for him. Obviously, Grievous is a good pairing for him, um, but it's similar in concept. It's a die with some damage sides. It has 1 less damage side, right? Because I think Maul's lightsaber has 4 damage sides and this has 3.
Right.
But you can use it twice, and so yeah. I don't know. It's I feel like I'm just rambling about this mediocre to bad card.
You're rambling a little bit. It costs 3 resources, so that's already. I mean, the Maul's lightsaber costs 3 resources, but you activate it with the character that you attach it to. The one perk about this is that losing a character means this doesn't get discarded.
Yep.
But it takes an extra action every round to roll it in.
That's true. Well, so I mean, you would only play it in something that you don't really care about speed, I guess. Well, maybe that's not true. Maybe you're just a little bit slower than usual, but yeah, it does take an extra action every.
If you want me to brainstorm something that would use this, I would put it in a price quasi vehicle deck, maybe, because she has those melee sides. She's got that special to fix dice. Maybe, but you're never going to have the battlefield to.
Well, what about Grievous Towson? We were just talking about this deck with one of our friends earlier. It's an odd.
You know why I don't like it for Grievous Towson? Because all Grievous wants is weapons, and this is his bike, and it doesn't count as a weapon for him.
I just feel like the power action on Grievous is a trap.
It is a trap, but it's a fun trap.
That's very fair. Yeah. And this segment is where we lose all of our subscribers.
Yep.
So it was nice knowing you guys. This was a fun ride. Cool.
Yeah, listen to Cruisin's deck building tips. Grievous' wheel bike.
All right, let's move on to something good.
More competitive.
Yeah. This is one of your cards now that you asked for. This is Lack of Faith. You want to read off what it is?
Sure. So, Lack of Faith is a blue 2-cost villain event. It says spot a blue character that is 15 or more points to remove all characters' character dice. So the reason I like this card is a little character that came out last set by the name of Yoda. He's awful. I hate him. He's always got those dice out there. Anything you do to like fix them or change them, he'll fix them back with his special or his focus side. This says, no, Yoda, get out of here. I don't want any of your mess. I don't want any of your business. Clear those dice off the board. 2 cost is a little steep for 2 control, and that's essentially what this is paying for.
Yeah.
But in decks like that, with those dice that are harder to control, like how do you remove a disrupt side or a discard side? This can kill those dice before he starts chaining those specials, before the vehicle dice start getting flipped to those 3 damage sides, those Y-wing specials, all that stuff. I like this for that option to just say, get out of here.
Yeah.
And now with the new set, there's some options for this. For instance, the Fifth Brother is a 16 cost elite. Works perfect.
Sure.
Count Dooku is 18 cost elite. This is a good candidate for it. These higher cost blue characters are starting to come into the fore now, whereas the last set it was pretty much Talzin was the blue character.
Kylo too.
Seven Sister, yeah. And
Kylo
they weren't
good for this too, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a new option to deal with those stupid Yoda dice.
Yeah. So, and it's also interesting because it's kind of like a meta call, right? Because if like something like 4 wide vehicles becomes popular, this card's not very good in that matchup. But when there's a lot of like big littles or medium, sorry, I feel like I should explain what that means to listeners. So when I say big little, I'm talking about decks that have like one really powerful character and then one support character. A good example of that is like Obi-Wan and Maz, or back in the days of the early Awakenings meta, Darth Vader and a Tusken Raider, for example. Although maybe that's more middle, but so that's big little, and middle is when you have like 2 kind of medium powered characters that equally contribute, as opposed to multiple characters. Like most vehicle decks run 3 or 4 characters that aren't individually as powerful. Anyway, so my point was that this card becomes better the more powerful your opponent's character is. So it's definitely an interesting card.
I'm not saying it's going to be meta defining.
Sure.
I just think it's fun and a new way to deal with character dice that I hate, like Yoda's.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Seems good. All right, so we have 2 cards left, and then we're going to talk about some decks real quick. The next card is one of my personal favorites so far in terms of control, and that is Beguile. Beguile is a 2-cost blue neutral event, and its text reads, reroll an opponent's die, then turn one of their dice to any side, then remove one of their dice. And so I say this a lot, but it's worth repeating. I love flexibility in a game like this, and this is like the definition of flexibility. For 2 resources, you can control 3 different dice. Or an important thing to note on this card, which might not be as obvious when you read through it the first time, you can do this all on the same die. If your opponent rolls out and there's only 1 die in the pool, but it's going to kill one of your characters and like you're desperate, you could re-roll that die and then turn it to a blank and then remove it. It doesn't say it has to be different dice, but it works on any type of die. I can, I can re-roll your 2 damage, then I can blank out something else, and then I can just remove any die. Like if you have a Planetary Uprising or a Planetary Bombardment with 7 indirect showing, well, guess what? I'm removing it. And and there's even situations where there's only 2 dice. You can re-roll one of them, and if it's a blank, then you're cool with it. You don't have to remove that one anymore. You could remove the other one. So super flexible, can affect a lot of dice. 2 resources isn't a terrible price to pay. I think this is going to be a really strong card.
Yeah, and it like you said, it is super versatile because it's blue neutral. Blue is in every deck nowadays, it seems like. So the soft control, which what I mean by that is like the re-rolling of dice and changing sides of dice. It keeps the die in the pool, but it adds a cost to your opponent, having the discard to re-roll to try and fix it. The then being able to remove the most impactful die after all of that is what's nice.
Yep.
The 2 cost is a little steep. I wish it removed 2 dice in the process, but I understand why it doesn't.
Yeah, it would be
But
broken.
I do like how it can really disrupt game plans.
Yeah, it can turn a lot of damage into 0 damage. It's a very cool card. All right.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, one more card, and this is my early call for the most underrated card that I just haven't heard many people. Actually, I haven't really heard anybody talking about it, but I think it's super strong, and that is Streetwise. This is a 1-cost yellow neutral support, and it reads: before you play a yellow event, you may exhaust this support to decrease its cost by 1. So it's essentially It Binds All Things, but for yellow events, and it will save you a ton of resources. So of course your deck has to be able to take advantage of it, right? So you need to be running a decent amount of yellow events. But obviously there's easy pickings, entangle, hyperspace jump. Um, and the new one, Into the Crosshairs, the 3-cost that has ambush and lets you remove all of any individual symbol. Excuse me, your opponents of an individual symbol. Like, all of these things become so much better when you don't have to save up resources for them. If this is on the board and you have no resources, your opponent still has to play around easy pickings. It just makes it so much more flexible. And so as that combined with, I mean, we all know how powerful It Binds All Things is. It saves tons of resources, and it like that gradual gaining over rounds that adds up by the end of the game. It's a snowball effect, and this has a similar effect, but can also be used on events to react to things that your opponent can't disrupt you to play around anymore. So I think this is going to be a very strong card. I'm going to play around with a place for it. I haven't decided what deck I want to try it in first, but it's certainly high on my list of things to test. What do you think?
Yeah, I tell you, when I see this, it makes me sad seeing this card and then thinking about how much Jin costs.
Oh,
Because 20 elite for essentially this 1-cost support's ability,
yeah, that's
that is rough.
yeah.
Like,
Well,
Jin,
actually, it's worse because Jins
why?
has to be the first event you play.
Oh yeah, I forgot. It's more restrictive.
Yeah, yeah,
Thanks for making me even more depressed.
yeah. So you can't play that Loth Cat because then you won't be able to use Jin's ability afterward.
Exactly. But I do like the fact that this does open up those sorts of, because like I mean, much to my shame, I used to play a Jin deck back in the day. I thought it was hilarious and awesome. And having that like electroshock online for free,
Yeah.
during a turn was always really nice. And
Point out for the public that you played Jin back when you could loop ammo belt and second chance and just live forever, and it was the most
yeah,
obnoxious thing ever. It was awful.
well, I mean, it was a 3-die deck,
Yeah.
so I had to cheat somehow to keep it competitive.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It
I
was,
got nerfed quick.
yeah, yes, it did, which is good because that was one of those things where it was like it was actually, I feel like, turning people away from the game. Like, if a new player comes in, they're like, "I've killed you 4 times. Why won't you die?"
You
That's
know
probably
what?
really frustrating.
That store championship we went to, I lost to a Pomaz. I feel like
Yeah,
that
that's
turned
fair.
way more people away than my
That's very
stupid Jin
that's very
Padme
true.
mill deck.
Yeah, that's very true. I cannot argue with that. Yeah. All right, so that's Streetwise. Mark my
Streetwise is
words.
good. Streetwise is
It
good.
will be in some very powerful decks. All right, we have a couple decks we want to talk about real quick. That the first one is actually the one I'm considering bringing to the Store Championship um, tomorrow, because today's Friday, so tomorrow. Um, and it is Finn and Cassian. I love Cassian, as I've already talked about. I've always thought Finn was a cool character. I just couldn't find a good partner for him. And yeah, so it just gave me an idea to try this. Now, I have the list up on the stream. I'm going to read off the cards real quick, but I also want to preface this by I haven't tested this exact build yet, and I actually think that I'm going to change one or two things that I'll discuss right after I go through it. So, 2 DH-17 blasters, 2 DL-44 blasters, 2 E11 blasters, 2 holdouts, 1 Rex's blaster pistol, 2 second chance, 2 night snipers, and then for supports I have 2 honor guard and 2 suppressive fire, and then events I have 2 blaze of glory, 2 easy pickings, 2 entangle, 2 field medic, 2 friends in low places, 2 hit and run, and a hyperspace jump. So the first thing that I'm thinking as I'm looking at this list is that I have too many upgrades. I have 13 upgrades, 11 dice cards, and I might, and it's kind of, some of them are a little bit on the higher curve, so I'm thinking of cutting the DL44s for events. I'm not 100% certain what this event is going to be yet. I have some ideas, but I'm not quite sold on them. But the interesting thing about the whole deck was that the battlefield I chose is Docking Bay, so that I'm relatively fast. The idea is I can just keep bringing back Honor Guard or Suppressive Fire over and over. And so it's just kind of like looping removal. I don't need to necessarily put as much removal in my deck.
And that also has the benefit of not really benefiting a whole lot of other decks out there in the meta.
True. Yeah. There's
Now,
it's any support, right? So I mean, I guess if pod racers become a thing.
what are you saying? Now, one thing I will say is that your cost curve for this deck is a little on the high side. You've got a lot of your upgrades are at least 2 or 3 costs.
Yep.
You've got a lot of 1, couple 2 or 3 cost event. Have you considered Maz's Vault? I know you hate giving your opponent resources,
Yeah. So
but you need them.
right, and so that's I mean that's another reason I was talking about cutting the DL44, and one of the events that I was considering putting in its place was logistics, to help help that curve in addition to getting rid of one of the expensive weapons. So that's one option I'm considering. I hadn't really considered Maz's Vault, but it's not a terrible idea. Like the reason I don't like to use it, at least right now, is because Sabine Ezra is a thing, and they just use that money way better than I do. So I was always afraid to give them the extra money, but I guess Suppressive Fire negates that a little bit. But you're right that the cost is a little bit high, so there definitely are some adjustments that I needed to make. But it's the idea is pretty similar. I feel I just maybe need to make some tweaks before tomorrow. I'm actually going to play some of this on TTS tonight after we're done with the show, so I will use that to determine what swaps I want to make.
Yeah, I built the version of this deck. It wasn't the same build that you have here, but something similar a week or so ago when we were testing. And of course, you played Mill against me, so I didn't get a good feel of how it operates. But
I don't know what you're
I
talking
think
about.
there's something there because Cassian. I mean, even when you're resolving those sides that aren't damage, you're still dealing a point of damage with that indirect. And hand control is good even with aggro decks. Being able to discard that last card or two that they're holding on to, a Rise Again or an All In or something else that they're saving for a rainy day, I find value in that. I think that Cassian as a damage dealer is a sort of kind of an untapped potential here. Most people see him and see a Mill character.
Yep.
I think there's more damage potential there than Mill.
Yep, and that's what I was saying earlier. So he's so flexible; he can go either way. Yeah. USS Captain in chat right now is saying about, well, first off, agreeing with you that it's high damage, high resource curve, and he's talking about how I should be adding more zero cost cards and stuff. So I tend to agree with that. Like I want to put in, like I said, logistics, and then people were recommending Lothcat as a removal option, which I'm willing to test, but I'm very averse to just because I feel like all of my
I will remove those
dice,
Cassian die
right,
every
exactly,
round.
like, and the Finn dice aren't any better. Like all of my dice, my character dice specifically, but also the upgrade dice, but are really strong, and I'm hesitant to put in a removal that requires me to, well, not only remove one, but my opponent gets to choose. So there's probably some other options I can look into there. Certainly cutting some upgrades to bring the curve down. Logistics is probably a good idea, but there's a base there that I can at least play off of. So we'll see how it goes. I'll probably be coming back on next week's episode talking about how I went 0-4 at the Store Championship, and it's because I could never afford to play anything. But all right, let's move on to the one that you might be bringing this weekend.
I am bringing because my card pool is very limited.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing. I had different decks that I wanted to talk about, but then we were like, well, what? I guess what we bring is based on what we pull. So let's that we didn't really have much choice in the matter. So yeah, what are you gonna bring on Saturday?
So I had been playing around with the Mandalorian Super Commandos with the spoiled cards for the past week or so,
Hmm.
and during our draft, and I bought a box at the event, I ended up pulling two of them and two Mandalorian Vambraces. So I decided, you know what? I've already got the shell there. I don't need a ton of Way of the Force cards for it. So I decided to run, I call it Mama Mandos. This is a very work in progress name, but it is Elite Mother
You only get one
Talzin.
chance. That's the name now.
Well, I guess it is. Elite Mother Talzin with two Mandalorian Super Commandos. Now, this deck, kind of by the nature, has a lot of upgrades in it. I run 16 upgrades. It's
Oof.
two Chance Cubes, one Crystal Ball, two Force Illusion, two Force Push, two Force Throw, two Force Wave, one Hunting Rifle, two Mandalorian Vambraces, and two Sith Holocron. Now, the idea behind those upgrades is that I want to cycle things like Chance Cube, Van Braces, the Holocrons onto those Super Commandos and get as much value as I can out of them for
Sure.
that low cost. And then the Holocrons especially get out those force powers. Force Throw is like not only is it a control card, but it's also a damage card. It's built into a special, so it's hard to get rid of.
Yeah.
Force Push can really help control the damage on the other side of the board, or it has a couple of two range sides on it that's really
Yeah.
punishing. And Force Wave is like any three character list on the other side of me is going to be terrified of those cards. So, now moving on to the event suite, I've got one By Any Means, which I talked about earlier. I love that card. I've got two Feel Your Anger, two Flank, two Frighten, two Overconfidence, one Rise Again, two Risky Move, which is another event that I love, and two Witch Magic. So
Remind me
all
again what
told,
Risky Move does.
Risky Move is a one cost neutral event, I believe. It's yellow, and it removes a die, and then your opponent, the next card that they play, has the ambush keyword
That's
on
right.
it.
Yeah.
So the risky move is you give them that essentially swiftness on their next
Right.
action.
Hmm.
But if they are low
Is
on
it next
cards
action or
or
next card that they play?
next card that they play.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So like if I can't remember the actual verbiage now. Like I wonder if they take an action other than playing a card, do they lose that, or is that just say the next action period or the next card they play period?
I believe it says just the next card that they play. So I
Says
think
the
it goes
next card an
past the
opponent
next.
plays
Yeah.
this round. Yeah. So even if it's not their
Yeah.
very next action, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. That is
But
it certainly is a risky move, but
that's the card. That's the name
yeah.
of the card.
Yep. It's very
Now,
aptly
with
named.
this deck, I only have four even costed cards. Everything else is odd costed. So Mother Talzin's ability is online.
Hmm.
I thought about building a version that goes much lighter on like drop all the force powers, drop the holocron, and go with like the Bartadin Spear, the new one cost upgrade that you like discard the top card of an opponent's deck or any deck, and then deal a damage to an opponent. I can't remember the wording. I'm
I
not
think
reading
it's
the card.
yeah, underhanded tactics, is that it?
No, it's the Bartadin Sphere.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought about building a deck that used like a couple of crystal balls and a couple of those, and along with a couple of other lower cost upgrades. But I love Sith Holocron, and I love the idea of being able to put these force powers on these commandos and having them roll in with some real
Yeah.
oomph, some real, kind of ability there. And I haven't tested it, just like your deck. I have not played this at
You're not
all.
really gonna have time to test anything, right?
Yeah.
We opened the packs yesterday. We're going tomorrow, and today we're
Yeah.
recording a podcast. So
Yeah. Say we opened the packs yesterday. Like I bought this box and took it home and opened it like literally before I went to bed.
yeah,
Yeah, and then I woke up, went to work, came home, ate some dinner, and now I'm recording this podcast. And then tomorrow morning we're driving to this store championship. So yeah, I will have enough time to put the deck together. I will
right.
not have enough time to test it.
Yep. I like this. The suggestion for the name from chat is Mother and Sons of Mandalore. It's very appropriate.
I do like the tie-in as well. That
Yeah,
is a good one.
staying on brand. I like it. Okay, I have one more deck that I want to go over, and this was what I was hoping to bring, but I also knew that I never would be able to because there's like 4 or more legendaries from Way of the Force in here, and I was only opening one box. But it is one I've been playing a lot with on TTS, and that is Thrawn Snoke. So if you've listened to our first couple episodes, you know that I love me some Thrawn. He's my favorite character, both in Star Wars and in Destiny. So like having another option for him is awesome. And holy cow, is this deck fun to play? Like so if you don't know what Snoke does, he has a power action that says you can deal 1 damage to another one of your characters to resolve one of their dice by increasing its value by 2. So the idea here is you get a 2 resource side on Thrawn, use Snoke's power action, get 4 resources, so like turn 1 you have 6 resources, which is obviously ridiculous. And so it's a vehicle deck. Let me run through the deck real quick. Upgrade. The only upgrade in the deck is Chance Cube. Obvious reasons. You have a lot of ways to. Both Snoke and Thrawn have focus sides, so it's really easy to flip it to the 3, etc. Then you have the supports, which is the meat of the deck, where all your damage comes from. Fang Fighter, 2 Fang Fighter, 2 First Order TIE Fighter, 2 Hailfire Droid Tank, 2 Planetary Bombardment, 2 Pod Racer, and 2 Z95 Headhunters. So the Planetary Bombardments I kind of have in there because it's really fun. I'm not convinced yet that it's the right call for the deck. But when you get out there, obviously it hurts a lot. But the fun interaction is the getting the Hailfire Droid Tank immediately, and then play a Pod Racer, deal an indirect damage. Oh no, I roll a blank, it comes back to my hand, I play it again, it does another indirect damage. And so you just get a whole bunch of these supports out. Of course, the downside is your characters don't deal any damage by themselves. But you have a decent amount of health, and your supports deal tons of damage, so like it certainly makes up for it from that. Then the event suite, I have 1 Art of War, which again, it has Thrawn on it, so I was like, this seems like something I should test. I'm not sure if it's the right call, but it has potential, I feel like. 2 Beguile, I've already talked about how much I love that card. 2 Dark Ritual, 1 Feel Your Anger, 2 Flanking Maneuver, 2 Hidden Motive, 2 Overconfidence, 2 Pinned Down, and my favorite, 2 Sudden Impact, because using Sudden Impact on a Planetary Bombardment 7 side to do 4 damage to all of their characters is
No,
so fun.
no.
I did that on stream to poor Sugi. Sugi, what was it? 2 weeks ago or now? A week and a half ago now? Where he was playing 3 wide mill, and I did it on a 6 side to do 3 damage to all of his characters, one of which was Yoda, who had 3 health left. He didn't think it was funny. I thought it was hilarious, but to each their own, right? So, like, I feel like this is one this obviously isn't a tuned list yet. There's some experimentation that still needs to happen, but I think it has potential to be a thing in this meta. What do you think?
Yeah,
You think this is a deck that could like make it?
I want villain vehicles to work.
Yeah.
There hasn't been a good one like ever.
Yeah.
So the hope is something this meta can come out with vehicles and kind of be more effective. Do I think it's a 2 character list that doesn't have any damage? Or I guess Snoke might have an indirect
He
side or
has
something.
one,
But
two indirect side. That's right.
yeah, but I don't know if this is the way. But like you said, this deck is fun. It's also shockingly fast at getting this stuff out.
Yeah.
Like
Oh yeah.
with a chance cube and Snoke's ability and the 2 resource side on Thrawn and the 2 focus on Thrawn,
Mhm.
you can end up first turn with 8 resources,
I
like something
very
crazy.
regularly do that with
Yeah.
this deck.
So
Yeah.
yeah, being able to have like you said, that droid tank and like a TIE fighter first turn, and then the pod racer is hilarious, but
Yeah.
uh,
It's a
the
super cheap way to just keep piling it on. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm not I'm not
So
super convinced on that one, but it's been surprisingly good. It's got 2 damage sides on it. I don't
yeah, that's
know if
true.
you want
It has a is it a ranged and a 2 indirect? Is that
one
how?
ranged and 2 indirect. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm curious. Do you hard mulligan for a chance cube and the droid tank?
Um, I I don't hard mulligan because when I think hard mulligan, I think discard everything unless I get those exact cards. But I, if I have like a 3 cost vehicle or better, I'll probably keep it. Um, and then throw the rest away. A chance cube, obviously, I keep. But my goal is to get one of chance cube or a 3+ cost vehicle because if the worst case, the worst thing that could possibly happen is I don't get a vehicle turn 1, and that's the downside of the deck, right? Because if you don't get a vehicle, you're not doing any damage.
Well, I mean, because looking at the list, you've got 12 vehicles,
Yes.
and some of them are more there to ping off of the droid tank, like
Hmm.
the Z95 and the Pod Racer.
Yeah.
Like, if you draw that in your opening hand, you're like, eh.
Yep.
So you're only looking at maybe 8 vehicles that you want, and then the Planetary Bombardment is not one you would want in your opening hand. So
Right.
now you're down to like 6 vehicles you're looking for.
Hmm.
Like, I wonder if that is, and I honestly, I wish there was a tutor for vehicles,
Oh yeah.
not just pod racers,
Yep.
but vehicles. I think that would be awesome, possibly too broken, but
Yeah. I've seen
I hope,
versions of it that have like Dooku's Starfighter, the one that it just draws you a card every time it activates. So now, I mean, that's another one that doesn't deal any damage though, so it's a trade-off.
yeah. Well, I mean, there's boundless ambition. You clearly have enough money to,
Hmm. That's true. That's a good idea, actually. And there's other
yeah,
vehicles too. Like I was playing around with an ATDP that I'll probably put that back in. But I mean, the Headhunter has a 3 side, so it's a 2 cost vehicle. I almost always can get all of my dice to whatever side I want with all the focus I have. Because the other thing is, once you have the stuff out that you need, you can use Snoke's power action to turn Thrawn's 2 focus into a 4 focus to
yeah.
literally fix every one of your dice. So the Headhunter has been surprisingly good. Like it's cheap, it has a 3 side. I mean, what more do you want, right? It's just vehicles
Yeah.
out there that deal damage. So
I'm just, it's kind of like when I look at the deck, that's the first thing I think of is like,
yeah,
what am I looking for in that opening hand?
yeah, I'm certainly not
For
excited if
me,
my
it
only
would
vehicle is
be
a Headhunter.
yeah, Chance Cube and the Droid Tank would be my 2 that I would want as soon as possible.
Yep. Yeah, those are definitely the main targets. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but it's a deck that has some potential. Snoke has obviously a lot of partners to try out. Cad Bane is another one that's interesting. I've seen people do like 1 die Snoke in 3 wide lists with 3 characters that they're playing around with. So there's a lot of options to explore there. But
It,
sadly, I did not pull any Snokes, so I will not be building those anytime soon.
Say we've got our product coming; it'll just be here a week late.
True.
It's fine.
Yeah, that's true. We can still pull some. Cool. All right. So that's the last deck that I wanted to talk about. Um, so yeah, I mean, is there anything else that you wanted to go over before we wrap it up?
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about draft with this new set. Not like cards I'm super excited about, but this set it feels I feel it's not as balanced for draft as Legacies was. There's a
Interesting.
lot of cards. There's a lot of events. There's a lot of like costly plots. There's a lot of pod racing stuff that when it comes to draft, like I don't want to draft the Boonta Eve Classic, for instance.
Yeah, unless you already
Or
happen to have a bunch of pod racers. But yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
I don't want to draft the ones that I have to spot two yellow
right.
characters or two blue
Yeah,
characters.
two blue characters or Luke.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have either of those things.
Yeah. It's like unless you're lucky enough to draft Luke, that card
Right.
is dead.
Yep.
Now, I mean, there's a lot of really amazing draft cards in the set. Even like, for instance, last night I drafted Electropole. That card was awesome.
Yeah.
It has really solid damage sides.
And you had a Gungan.
It's got I had a Gungan. That makes it even more valuable.
Yeah.
But when you have like, I mean, it's just a 2-drop that is legit and it's not bad. Like that's all you need in draft. Like
Yep.
I'm not looking for some like crazy powerful card. I just want something that like does work and is fairly reliable.
Sure. So the one thing that I disagree with in that statement was that I think that the plots are helpful in draft. There's a lot of especially given how many cheap characters there are in this set. And I feel like the plots open up, not only do they open up possibilities for, character pairings depending on if you don't draft the characters you want or you just get a bunch of cheap characters, you can fill it out with a plot, but they're also, not all of them, but some of them are really good. Like Blockade was really strong.
Sure.
Long-term plan is insane in draft.
Yeah. Those are really good.
Yeah.
But then you've got stuff like Built to Last.
Right.
There are very
Yeah.
few,
Yeah.
it's
Calling in
like
favors.
I think we had maybe 2 unique weapons all
Yeah.
the whole box.
Yeah.
And it's a 4-cost plot.
Right.
You might get one use out of it all draft night.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yep.
and then the 4-cost, I can't remember the name of it, the yellow one that reduces the
favors.
Yeah. That's another one where it's like there are only so many high cost events. Yeah. That one's a little more useful than Built to Last,
Sure.
but these are 4-cost plots, so you have to really work your list to be able to bring those in.
Pass up on Plo Koon to use that.
Yeah. It's like I said, I had a blast drafting it last night.
Yeah.
I just think that there are enough cards in this set that are not draftable, whereas I didn't feel like I felt like every card in Legacies was draftable.
Well, and that makes sense because Legacies is the set that draft was introduced, so obviously that was a really heavy focus for Legacies, I would imagine anyway. Like if you're introducing that format, the set that happens when that drops, it makes a lot of sense for that to be focused around draft. Whereas this might not be. But it also is part of a block, so you maybe theoretically down the line you're doing a Legacy cycle draft and you take 2 packs from each set, and maybe that will help even it out a little bit. But generally, at least in the way we draft, we obviously focus on
the new set
at a time, right? Because by the time the new set comes out, we don't want to draft the old set because we already have everything. So, but yeah, I see what you're saying. There's a lot of scenarios where that's the case. I found myself passing up on a lot of events because I was like, I can literally never play this. So, yeah, that's a good point. Cool. All right, well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode. I hope you all are just as excited about Way of the Force as we are. I'm so excited that I'm going to a Store Championship tomorrow with absolutely zero testing, with a deck with just cards that I happened to open yesterday and just kind of hope for the best. So we'll see how it goes. It'll be fun either way. Hopefully, just go meet some people, have a good time, play some Destiny. So that's what it's all about. So, yeah, until next time, we will see you guys later, and we hope you have fun with Way of the Force. See you guys.
Yeah, see you guys. Have a good night.